adults and 21 were children. Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
We continue 24/7 operations to search for anybody who was affected by that deadly storm.
Officials said 11 girls from a summer camp on the banks of the Guadalupe River remain missing. Deaths have been reported in 6 Texas counties. Never shy, President Trump is letting his true feelings known about Elon Musk's announcement that he's starting a third party.
And I think starting a third party just adds to confusion. It really seems to have been developed for two parties. Third parties have never worked, so he can have fun with it, but I think it's ridiculous.
Musk announced the America Party on X Saturday and claimed, quote, "When it comes to bankrupting our country with waste and graft, we live in a one-party system, not a democracy. Crews are slowly making progress in battling California's largest wildfire of the year. The Madre fire started on Wednesday afternoon and has burned nearly 80,000 acres and is about 30% contained. The fire has prompted highway closures in San Luis Obispo County, along with evacuation orders and warnings. CAL FIRE says that more than 600 personnel are fighting the blaze. Video of a crack in the Space Needle's glass floor went viral. Operators of the Space Needle say it's not a problem. The part with an apparent crack is called the scuff plate. It's the layer of glass that's on top of 10 layers of glass that provide the floor's strength. The scuff plate is replaced twice a year. They compare it to a glass screen protector you would use on your cell phone to protect the phone's main screen. Rob Martier, NBC News Radio.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future of working families. Teamsters 1932.org.
Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000-member-strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
What is your plan for your beneficiaries to manage your final expenses when you pass away? Life insurance, annuities, bank accounts, investment accounts, all require a death certificate, which takes 10 days based on the national average, which means no money is immediately available, and this causes stress and arguments. Simple solution. The Beneficiary Liquidity Plan. Use money you already have. No need to come up with additional funds. The funds grow tax-deferred and pass tax-free to your named beneficiaries. The death benefit is paid out in 24 to 48 hours without a death certificate. You heard me right. Without a death certificate. Call us at 1-800-306-5086.
Tehibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau Arco Super Tea helps build red corpuscles in the blood which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TehiboTeaClub.com. Tehibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TehiboTeaClub.com, or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TehiboTeaClub.com.
For several years, KCAA has been marketing the Youngevity brand of nutritional and personal care products. Our experience with Youngevity has been 100% positive, so we are pleased to recommend them to you. Regarding nutritional supplements, we recommend Pollen Burst in the berry flavor and Tangy Tangerine 2.0 in the tablet form. For regularity issues, we recommend 3-Day Cleanse, and for personal care, we recommend Morning Hydration Cream. You can shop online for Youngevity at www.kcaateam.com, or you can order by phone by calling 800-982-3197 and tell customer support that you are part of the KCAA team. Youngevity is an American company based in San Diego. Call Youngevity at 800-982-3197 and ask about monthly auto ship that allows you to buy Youngevity products at wholesale prices. That number again, 800-982-3197.
Rice Fire Protection encourages listeners to shop small business and buy local. When you support locally owned businesses, you're investing in your neighbors and community. So before heading to big box stores or online giants, think local and invest in your hometown. That's from Rice Fire Protection in Moreno Valley. For top quality service at prices you can afford, call 951-243-6677 for Rice Fire Protection, where they are on the air because they care.
NBC News Radio, I'm Rob Martier. Search and recovery efforts continue in Central Texas following catastrophic flooding that left more than 70 people dead and dozens missing. Many of the victims were children at the Camp Mystic Girls Camp. Governor Greg Abbott.
I had the opportunity yesterday to visit Camp Mystic and get to see firsthand what happened there, as well as all the way downstream after that.
10 campers and a counselor are still missing from Camp Mystic. At least 30 other people are also missing elsewhere in the state. What's left of Tropical Storm Chantal is dumping heavy rain in the Carolinas as it moves north after making landfall. The National Hurricane Center says Chantal weakened to a tropical depression with top winds of about 35 miles an hour as it moves further inland. It's shaping up to be the busiest day of travel over the 4th of July holiday weekend. AAA expected more than 72 million people will be on the move during the holiday period. Rob Martier, NBC News Radio.
KCAA.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Park, Dr. Akil Bashir, Andrew Rodeman, and Ryan Rhodes. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week, we're going to talk about... First, we'll talk about your boy Diddy, then we'll talk about the president and what he's been doing. But yeah, your boy Diddy.
Not my boy.
Huh?
Not my boy. Not my boy.
What's up? Well, y'all just gonna leave him out there like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think he'll be all right.
That's a big gray area.
Yeah. So my thing is, what do you think about? First of all, we'll go into basically so that everybody kind of knows what happened with Sean Combs. I know that everybody is aware of the fact that a jury has returned verdicts on his case on two of the counts. One is the RICO statute, which is the racketeering statute. He was found not guilty. The one regarding sex trafficking, he basically was found not guilty. And then with regards to basically transportation to engage in prostitution, those two counts, he was found guilty. I mean, let's just talk about, I mean, instead of let's like not getting emotional about it, let's kind of begin and start talking a little bit about each count. So for example, the racketeering charge. So basically racketeering has 4 elements. So the way it works when you're charged with a crime, every crime has elements. Mm-hmm. And generally most crimes have, 2 to 5 to 6 elements that you have to prove each. And if you can't prove, or the prosecution can't prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt, they have to find you not guilty of that particular charge. So in this particular case, with regards to the RICO case, the first thing that they had to prove that there was a RICO enterprise. And also RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act. That's how they get RICO. That's the acronym. So basically a RICO enterprise is an individual, partnership, corporation, association, or other legal entity or any group of individuals associated. In fact, although not a legal entity, it can be a legitimate organization or a criminal one, like a crime family, which we generally saw the mafia, the mob type of cases. It must be a distinct entity, not just an individual, and it must have structured hierarchy or a chain of command and a common goal tied to criminal activity. Mm-hmm. The second thing, interstate commerce. Obviously, interstate commerce, the government generally does not prosecute anything unless it is actually related to interstate commerce, meaning that's how the federal government gets its jurisdiction, because it generally, unless it's a criminal statute, but for the cases of a RICO case, almost anything, it actually has jurisdiction if the crime crosses state lines. So that's where you get the interstate commerce. Then a pattern of racketeering activity. So basically there has to be predicate acts, something they call predicate acts, almost like gang cases here in California, where the racketeering activity, there has to be 2 predicate acts of racketeering activity within a 10-year period, meaning these acts have to be, it could be murder, kidnapping, gambling, arson, robbery, bribery, extortion, drug trafficking, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, among others. And it has to be some continuity. In other words, the acts must be related and show a pattern of ongoing criminal activity. And conducting or participate. So we got the first 3 elements: enterprise, interstate commerce, pattern of racketeering activity. Then conducting or participating in the enterprise's affairs. That means that the defendant must be associated with or employed by the enterprise. There must also be they must also conduct or participate in the enterprise's affairs through the pattern of racketeering activity. And that means that they must have some level of control or investment in a criminal enterprise. So I think that I don't think they were even, personally, I don't think they were even close on a RICO case.
Yeah.
I mean, with regards to Bad Boy Entertainment, because I'm looking at the indictment and the idea that Bad Boy Entertainment was basically a criminal organization. I think that the jury saw right through that allegation or that element of the RICO statute, because I don't believe it. We all know that Bad Boy was Bad Boy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't a criminal enterprise. I think it was, take that type of
music.
Right. So I don't think that they had that. So I think the jury was right with regards to that. Now, the next one that they came up with was the allegation of sex trafficking. And so in order to sex trafficking, which was count 2, it's the transportation of women or any person for the purpose. Well, this is actually what he was found guilty of. So sex trafficking is basically the idea of basically like interstate commerce pimping.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty much what sex trafficking is. Right. Is more like and then the transportation of women is almost more, if you relate the difference between a pimp and a John. Like the pimp would be more like someone involved in sex trafficking.
Yeah.
A John would be more like not the transportation for prostitution. So the transportation is what he was found guilty of. And that was basically, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So in other words, the sex trafficking would be like, he's really pimping and he's pretty much making money. You know how, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So they found him not guilty of sex trafficking because I don't think that he was in the business of trafficking women for the purposes of what we would pretty much traditional pimping type of case.
Yeah.
Then when we talk about transportation of women for the purposes of prostitution, which originally was like the Mann Act. I know we've heard of the Mann Act, MANN Act.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically pretty much was used primarily because of there's a lot of racism behind the Mann Act. And Jack Johnson, that was kind of one of the things that we talked about, where they were scared that white women would be with black men.
Mm-hmm.
And if you research the Mann Act, you'll find out there's some racism that went behind the Mann Act. But basically, it's saying that he brought in individuals for the purposes of prostitution. That was really what he was found guilty of.
Mm.
I mean, I personally feel like, now, I mean, there's a lot of emotion that goes into, when people are accused of crimes. And that's what makes the criminal justice system so unfair because, it's just like, for example, let's just say there's a guy who has a history of, say he was a gang member at one time. And now all of a sudden he's being charged, he goes to 7-Eleven and gets into an argument with someone and the person alleges that, he pulled a gun out on him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then what the prosecutor is going to do is they're wanting the jury to see that at one point in time he was in a gang.
Yeah.
Right. For a motive, they'll do everything that they can because technically you're not supposed to be able under the new law to do the principal case and the gang case together. They have to be bifurcated. In other words, the principal case has to be tried first and then the gang has to be tried second. However, what the courts have interpreted the act, meaning that it does allow you to show motive, intent, and identity. So in other words, they might say, well, they called a monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're able to bring into the gang thing or the gang history to show that that was his gang name, or that was the intent because the guy was wearing blue and the other guy was wearing red. So the whole idea is to dirty up the minds of the juror.
Correct.
To make them think that the person is bad, so they don't look at what happened, but they look at the fact that they think he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we got when we saw the Cassie video.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you saw was the fact that he committed a crime, but he wasn't charged with that crime.
Correct.
He was charged with something different.
Yeah.
Now, if he was in the state of California, I mean, just like Chris Brown and Rihanna, it's domestic violence. The statute of limitations is way gone because he can't be charged with domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
If he was charged with domestic violence and we saw that video, I'd be like, yeah, they got him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But that's not what was going on in this particular case. What was going on in this particular case was that he was being charged with this expansive RICO statute, which you can get. I mean, it kind of puts everybody into the fray with a RICO. And the sex trafficking, and then show that he beat up Cassie. So the whole thing was, let's dirty up and show how bad of a guy he is.
Yeah.
And if we dirty him up and show how bad of a guy he is, then this is what we do as a jury. So a lot of what we see where there's people that were upset was as purely emotional.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just and that's what you do with juries. But the jury was smart enough to read through it, and he probably got the closest. I can see that there's an argument that there was the transportation for the purposes of prostitution. In fact, because these were sex workers.
Yeah.
They came across state lines, so there's an argument that could be, true. I mean, but pimping and pandering in most jurisdictions in any state court is going to get you probably a couple of years, maybe at the most, if anything, if not just some sort of probation.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's kind of what they did. And I mean, so you got to understand that they had dudes then in full military gear and tanks at his house.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is what we end up with.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, they said they found some guns. I said, oh, they found some guns. That's a problem because if they got serial numbers scratched off of guns, and guns, we remember what happened to T.I., right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. But you really can't,
that disappeared, did it?
Who?
The gun thing that they bring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just ended up being, baby oil case.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, again, I try to separate the two because I think that you cannot convict someone because they're bad people. I think that the federal government was engaging in a level of being the moral police.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know that there's people out there. I mean, he might be a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure that what we saw with what he did to Cassie, that was terrible.
Exactly.
And if he was being charged with that, no matter what she consented to in any of the other cases, then I can say, he probably going to get that DV charge.
Correct.
But that's really that's not what happened. He's being charged with, but I think that what the jury saw was that people were willing participants.
Correct.
They don't believe that anybody was forced into doing anything based upon the information. And everybody is really upset. Some people are upset, just like the O.J. Simpson case, and not understanding, like for me, I'm one of the people that believe that they should have found O.J. not guilty. Yeah. I don't think they proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
That's just the way I feel. Not feeling one. I don't know whether OJ did it or not. I could just tell you this. I don't think that the prosecution did its job of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
I felt the same way about that specific case. I personally think that he did it, but like I don't know if you saw like a documentary they did on the O.J. Simpson, the Made in America, where they go through the case and like everything surrounding it. Mm-hmm. They did, like you said, they did not prove that he did it. Like I think a few years later, technology would have had it to a way where he probably would have been found guilty, but just at that time, no. You're absolutely right about that.
Well, I think that basically you can make the argument if you were to you could make a really valid argument that he was set up.
Mm.
That was part of it. That's a major part of it.
You see what I'm saying? So, and I think that's a problem, when you got to see. And I think that if they can't, how can you prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt when the police didn't do what they're supposed to do when they're doing these cases?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But anyway, just going back to P. Diddy and looking at, the jury's verdict and people not understanding and being upset with how things happen, going off on podcasts and being mad.
Yeah.
But,
But I think that's what a lot of cases, especially when it comes around to celebrities and stuff like that, particularly P. Diddy, when you say you can get the public tied up in the emotional aspect of it by showing them something so negative about the individual, thinking that the jury is going to look at that negativity and say, well, okay, he's guilty for A, B, C, D, instead of just judging each a particular charge according to how it was. And I, like you said, I think the jury actually saw into that a lot of the individuals kept coming up there saying what they've been communicating for the last 5 to 7 years. And yeah, we participated in this, it wasn't like something was done by force, but that negative video that they showed them, they was hoping that the jury would say, oh, this dude got to be guilty because he did this. But, the racketeering, man, that was out the window. But I think it was a witch hunt. And they was just hoping that the jury just going to find him guilty on all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, once again, removing the emotions out of it, because I do think that he's a bad person. I do believe that enough has come out where I don't think that he's the greatest guy. But when you look at the case, and you look at just sort of the narratives that came out before all of the trials started happening, they were saying that there were drugs in the baby oil and, like I said, the gun things, and you see them raiding his house, and it makes it look like a much bigger thing. Yeah. Not to say it was a small thing, but it just looked like a much bigger thing, and that, oh yeah, he's doing some crazy stuff. And when you come down to it and you look at the actual facts of the case, while there might have been some, malpractice, some weird things, some illegal things there, because he did clearly get found guilty for a couple of things. It just looks like he said, the other week he was just doing freaky stuff. And you can't necessarily arrest somebody for doing freaky stuff, especially if there's consent there, and it looked like there was a lot of consent there. So it's just one of those situations where they clearly were trying to, like Bilal said, bring in other stories and crazy things that he's done in the past that he probably should have went to jail for those things, blowing up people's cars, domestic violence, all kinds of things like that. And, trying to get him for this specific thing. And it felt like I didn't really build the case strong enough.
It's just like even where they try to like talk about sexual preferences and sexual orientation. The reality of it is like, like that's the got you moment. It's like, okay, they said I walked in and then he was with such and such, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be real. I mean, you can't. Okay, they're saying that how does that go into like evidence that he was involved in this situation,
Yeah.
or that he was doing something illegal?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Just to try to, they want to. That's a character assassination,
Mhm.
and making But there's nothing illegal about any of that. So just going back, I mean, I think that he probably got I mean, even the thing about see what gets me about the transportation to prostitution was like, I mean, of course, I wouldn't co-sign that at all. The oldest profession in the world, the oldest profession.
The oldest profession.
But I mean, we got what's going on in Vegas. We got, I don't know, man. I mean, like I said, if he was anywhere else, you would get. You mean we the money they spent for that?
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like, and it goes further into the thing about how certain I mean, it's like if you want to see, this is the thing that people don't really understand, and something that I've come to realize about the system is like all they need to do is like want to get you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's it.
If they want to get you, they gonna, you know what I mean? They can make up anything. They can go back into your past, and everybody's got skeletons in their closet.
Yeah, and they know how to control the narrative by the media, using the media. And they put I'm telling you, they had so much stuff out on this dude, man, from one extreme to the next extreme, that kids was involved, guns was involved, all of this stuff.
Mine
and
is
so,
down.
I mean, and the thing about it is the great majority of the people that was sitting on that jury probably heard all this prior to them even going, to sit on the jury. You know what I'm saying? And so, and that's what they was hoping for. They was hoping that they heard all this negativity about this man. And then once who is to say he's this bad? I mean, how many freaks it is in Hollywood? Come on, let's think about that. We talked about Jeffrey Epstein and all these other dudes, that didn't get caught up. Let's see if the limelight was on them. The camera was on.
And then he was praying, and then after he got on the, I don't know if you've seen that image of him on his chair praying.
Yeah.
And then I seen this video. This lady, man, she's just going off like, "You praying? Was you praying when you was doing this to these girls and all this other stuff?" And I hope he is a changed man. That's my prayer.
Yeah.
I pray for all of them.
Yeah.
Everybody involved in the situation. I hope he, I mean, what kind of person would I be if the man said he wants to change who he is, and he does it? Maybe this situation will turn him and make him a different person. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe in rehabilitation. I do.
Yeah.
I believe in that. I do think that still has to be met with accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that makes you free of consequences, but I think that the best way to go forward. I mean this in like a number of different cases when it comes to criminals and all that thing. I think there's much more value in rehabilitation than there is just throwing people in jail and just forgetting about them. I just do. I believe that person.
Well, I think it was a serious wake-up call for him, because some people feel that they're untouchable when they get so much amount of money, and this might be that one
Like
thing.
the president.
Correct. This might be that one thing to just shake him to his core, and he can take his finances and use it for something more productive than just freaking.
Well, there was the state RICO statute is what Georgia was trying to get the president on. Right. Of course, that never went through, but that's amazing because we can be this outraged and upset with that. But then, somebody on the phone, Joe. But when it comes to, some of this other stuff, man, we don't give him that type of attention.
Yeah.
Like, he got 34 felonies, and he's married to an immigrant wife. He want to get rid of the felonies and
immigrants. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was just looking at the situation on this birthright. I was actually, defending, having some cases on where these people are being picked up. And I was actually saw a video, man, and saw them in Santa Ana the other day, the way they got out and went after people.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy what's going on, man. Yeah. So I know last week we was talking about, you know, should we be concerned? Should we have a coalition? And they really went after you two about what y'all was talking about.
About what we was talking about.
Yeah. they dogged y'all out now.
Hey,
Like, man, don't talk about my folks like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation too about, you know, how should any of that really matter to us, you know? And I think that, you know, I'm not going to keep beating a dead horse and going back over what we talked about last week, but you know, I know that they're talking about this, the birthright citizenship, and he's trying to do something about the birthright citizenship. In other words, people who the legality of your parents, the legal status of your parents determines whether, even if born in the United States, whether you're going to be legal, you know, in the witch cause. So it says that basically, I think that it basically boils down to if the mother is illegal, I think unless the father is legal, then I think that you're not automatically considered to be a U.S. citizen. And so there was a lawsuit against it, and basically pursuant to the law, the lawsuit really didn't go in on whether it's right or wrong as far as the merits of the case, but more or less addressing procedural issues with regards to it. And I think that people are really mad at the courts because the court isn't really, you know, coming in and really doing, you know, what it needs to do as far as, you know, trying to stop some of these things that he's doing that's unconstitutional. You know, and that's part of it. I mean, the next thing you know, after he does that, is he going to do something else?
It feels like it.
You know what I mean?
No, he's definitely going to do something else. If you can get away with one thing, you definitely going to try to get away with something else.
So I don't know, man. This dude,
you know, that's just his state of mind.
Yeah. I mean, and then, you know, he's coming down. I mean, basically, you know, he's just getting his free. Oh, yeah. What was that you was telling me about? Oh, you was telling me about the Haitians.
Oh, yeah, the Haitians.
Yeah. What's going on with that?
I don't know, man. They ran up in New York and the Haitians let them have it.
Really? What'd they do?
Yeah, the Haitian put hands on them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You look on them. They didn't take down a lot of the videos, but I saw some of the videos, you know, on TikTok and stuff like that. You know, but yeah, they just wasn't having it. You know, I mean, it's. I think it's totally different when you're running up in the streets opposed to running up in someone's job.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, if you running up in these jobs, you know, and pulling people out of school and pulling people out of job, I mean, you know, I mean, to me, that's who you want in the country. Someone that's going to be productive, somebody going to be working, somebody's going to be doing something that is good, that's going to benefit the country in general. But, you know, in hindsight, I can understand, you know, the individual's just not doing anything, that's just here for a criminal, you know, criminal enterprise or whatever you want to call it. I can understand those individuals. But and even to the point where someone not putting their best foot forward in terms of trying to get that citizenship, you know. So it's just with me, it's totally different, but I don't pay attention to the comments because I think everybody see things in a different, you know, look through a different spectrum when it comes to certain things, you know. But when you ripping, you know, kids and parents away from each other, you know, it just reminds me of slavery.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Oh,
today.
Here we go. You ready, Ryan?
I'm ready. I'm prepared.
Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Now, with regards to, do you think that we have been too lenient in our immigration policy when it comes to, you know, individuals who are who've come to this country and let's just say, don't have status and they come to the country. I know we had a situation in Chicago where they were really upset because a lot of the resources were taken from the Black community and actually redirected or towards the immigrant community, and people were really upset at the administration. So, I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think that there should be some real enforcement when it comes to the immigration policy?
Yeah, I think I do think that it's been lenient over the course of the years, and I think that there has to be, some type of guidelines, some type of structure to it all. And I believe it has gotten out of hand, but I think that I think the government knows where everybody is at, and I think that to allow people to live here for so long over the period of time and then get well established and then come snatch everything away from them, that says something totally different. I mean, I think there might be a process that you can kind of do something a little bit different by allowing them to, get the citizenship, or figuring out a way that will be a little bit more, how you say it, just not forceful. You know what I'm saying? I mean, forceful in the sense that, individuals that are doing something wrong. Yeah. But when you have people that's been here for 20 and 30 years that established themselves and has been proving themselves and not to be any criminals or something like that, I think you should be just a little bit more lenient with it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I'm one of those people that feels like as long as you're here and you're not like doing nothing wild, I feel like you should be allowed to stay. I mean, personally, and I speak from maybe a point of privilege where I feel like I don't necessarily feel or feel anything in my life disrupted by immigrants. There's no jobs, there's no aspects of my life where I feel like their presence is affecting anything to me. But I also, like I said, I recognize the privilege in that. I know there are people, blue collar people working, who say that their jobs are being affected and things like that. So I do feel for them. I do think they feel like there needs to be some level of structure. But at the same time, it's like, for people who have been here, like he said, like 20 years, and they're just working, just working to support a family. I think that those people honestly should be allowed to stay. If you've been here this long and you're not doing anything, disrupting anything, hurting anything, fine. But the people who are here, on criminal things, involved in criminal activities, for sure, we should be able to get them out of here. But like I said, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, though.
What about the issue of the fact that you have immigrants that come into this country and in many ways infiltrate or assimilate into the majority population at the expense of African Americans? In other words, do you feel like there has been a issue with the relationship between African Americans and some of these immigrant groups as to the way that they treat Black people?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I've heard and I've seen, just the way certain, but that's not a large segment of individuals. I think there's a small segment of individuals, and I can see that. And like Ryan was talking about, not being affected by certain things, and I think that, coming in and saying, well, okay, they're taking the jobs, doing this and doing that. I think that, as individuals, you go out and get what you want. Don't use anybody as an excuse. Okay, the job was there. If they took the job, they took the job. If they took it at a lower paying rate, then they took it at a low paying rate. Kick rocks and go ahead. I just don't feel like that we should use anything as an excuse in order for us to not progress. And I think some people use that as an excuse and not to progress.
Yeah, I agree. I also just feel like a long time ago, I just sort of figured out that I feel like Black Americans, like, we're everybody's enemy to some degree. And I look at it from that standpoint, because even, from, Black people from other countries, like, they even separate themselves from us, like Black American culture versus just maybe African culture or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Nigerians are not going to claim the same culture as we are, even though they might have some similar benefits. I've seen that sort of separation between the two. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard for me to say because, like, me personally, I might not be affected by that. But I have seen people who've said like they've lost jobs and things, and from lower blue collar workers things. So I mean, I can understand the outrage. I don't know exactly what you do about that. Like Bilal said, I don't think you should have it stop your desire for advancement or like just start taking it as a victim mentality. Yeah. But I do understand the feeling of, people coming in, taking your jobs, and then, assimilating into other cultures who also seem to have some type of issue with you. So
look, and look, I want to say this. Here's my thing. When someone tell me I can't, or when something stands in my way, that's my motivation. And I'm gonna give you an example. I've experienced it. Personally, I experienced it. I've experienced it doing sales with my business, and people complained about me.
No, about immigrants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Complained about me in a particular area, and this happened within the last year. And they said, "Look, he's doing this Tuesday." It got back to me, and they told me, "Look, you can no longer sell your products over here." And this was told. This is a true story. I said, "Okay, no problem." I said, "Well, I need to get somewhere where I can sell my products and I ain't got to worry about nobody else." So I went down to the city of Long Beach, got my insurance, got my license. I can go set up anywhere in the city of Long Beach, wherever I want to set up at. And nobody can question me. I got my license. But based on that, I didn't use that as a means to not progress. I used that as a means to level up. And so despite the fact that, okay, they complained about me, okay, I frowned upon it, but that was my motivation to level up.
So should we, I guess that just goes back to the whole idea is there some legitimacy with regards to those individuals who feel like that, and even you said it, that basically there tends to be the same type of, racist ideology that we may see from, white people, some white people. We see some of that from people from other countries who come in as immigrants. And now we're in a situation where we are directly called out for not being more involved in what is really going on. Like, not co-signing the idea of helping people who are going through this issue of being deported and protesting and those sort of things. So, I mean, is there any legitimacy to their argument that it's not our fight?
I can see how people feel that way. I can't see how people feel that way. But for me personally, I just have my own perspective towards things, because you're gonna encounter that. I mean, you're gonna encounter it wherever you go through. I mean, we've been encountering for years in this country. So I mean, I can't complain about one and not complain about the other.
Right.
So
now I'm just being devil's advocate, because I think that you have a lot of people who are listening who have legitimate questions. And when they have those questions, then how do we respond to that? I mean, we there are questions that I think need to respond to when we say that we believe that there should be a coalition. Of course, last week we spent a lot of time talking about the reason why there should be, obviously a coalition is the divide and conquer, and that basically, it's not really in our nature to really not help people who need help. I mean, that was really the idea. But at the same time, there has to be, I really don't get, I see that there's like two paradigms here. And the one paradigm is, okay, the fact that they come to this country and see African Americans a certain way, which is weird to me because, like I said, they all try to emulate us. Like not some,
but
all of them.
Yeah.
Which is weird, right? So, and then you're talking about individuals. Like it's almost a rites of passage when you come into this country. It's like it's the mob mentality. So in other words, you know, for example, the kid that gets bullied, right? So you come in, and because everybody is bullying the kid, then you want to join in the bully because you don't want that bullying to turn to you. You see what I'm saying? And so a lot of times, I mean, it's basically a sense of survival.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when they come into this country, they see how things are done and how, you know, things happen and how they do things, but I don't think they understand the reasons behind all of that. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, but they're honestly just doing what a lot of, you know, people who were raised, you know, born and raised there are doing. Like if you look at other communities, whether it be like the Indian community or certain Asian communities or things like that, like you'll see them try to assimilate into whiteness and white supremacy. You know, I've seen that many a time. You know, I feel like once again, and Black people, I feel like I said this last week, are just like special and unique in this fact that like we're the only race I feel like that is not able to detach ourselves from our culture to assimilate into white supremacy successfully. I think we're the only group and race that can do that. I've seen Asian people do it. I've seen Latino people do it.
Wow.
We're the only group of people that can't cling to whiteness as a way to like save us or a way to just advance. Eventually, you know, you see certain people who they let in, but usually it's they're using those people to
correct
control. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So if you see a, you know, my Morehouse brother passed away, Herman Cain, or you see, you know, what was my man's name? Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
Like guys like that, they'll let a few in, but it's usually to just as a representation thing, you know, as the token Black person who they can say, oh no, look, we let this person in, but you know, and they'll see the benefits, but it's nothing that advances anybody. So like the immigrants see that, you know, I understand why, you know, they try and assimilate the same way. But once again, for the Black community, it just continues to leave us isolated. So it goes back.
I think what's interesting now is that basically now that this immigration situation is going on, then you have, which part of our title is talking about the Black diaspora. Now I wonder how they're going to act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it comes to the issue about trying to determine whether they're, you know, they're citizens or not, or whether they're going to have issues with immigration. I mean, you know, I think that the immigration policy that we have in this country is a policy that's also very, you know, racist.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to making a determination as to who's going to get and how they're going to be treated as they go through, which we're going to see that as we're seeing with the immigration, the way they're picking people up.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to pick up a white immigrant that overstayed their visa or someone who looks a certain way. As you were saying, those who could pass, they're only going to pick up people who look a certain way. And they're really primarily going after people who are Hispanic without question.
Yeah.
And so if you happen to look that way, I mean, and just think about the implications of that. Now, if they're going after people in the diaspora, then why can't they stop me or you?
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, if you're going, I mean, it's really the ultimate profiling. Why is it that you're only going to Hispanic communities primarily, or certain communities where you're going to primarily find these individuals, and you're going in combat gear and you're just picking these individuals up?
Yeah.
And then you're going to make a decision afterwards as to whether they have citizenship or not, because we're not really walking around with our citizenship papers.
Yeah.
I mean, we were born here, but there's no way. I mean, of course you got a passport, but nobody walks around with a passport. But if they stopping you and you showing people a passport, first of all, they have no probable cause to stop you anyway.
Yeah.
Just because they're looking at you and they see that you may look like you may be someone who is not primarily a white American, that's really what we're rolling into.
Yeah.
So, I'm not backing away from my position from last week of saying that I believe that, we should step up, and I don't think that, and there's different ways. I'm not going to condemn anyone who goes out and decide that they want to help people who happen to be immigrants, because I've spent a large part of my professional career helping immigrants.
Correct.
In my profession as an immigration attorney. They come to me to help them, and I've been helping them way before any of this happened. I've been helping them for almost 20 years, including people from the Black diaspora and all over the world, in that process. So, I think that, they got sellouts too in their communities. And I think their sellouts are waking up.
Yeah.
Like, for example, some of them who are born in this country kind of like look down on other Hispanics who are not born in this country. But now with this birthright situation where it's like, yeah, you was born here, we might come get you too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they saying the same thing, we just follow the law. Then if they snatch them up and say, we want to send you back, then, what they're going to say, I'm sorry. You got to go. So, that's kind of the way that we're looking at it. But anyway, getting back onto one of the things that we asked a question last week, and I'm going to answer that question. The question is, not last week, but we've always asked this question about, I was asked this. I did this interview for this publication that I'm not going to mention right now. I don't know how they're going to write up the article, but the question was, what do you do, or what is it that we can do about discrimination and racism? Now was like the worst time to ever ask that question with the administration that we have right now, because I don't think there would ever, we're not going to get any legitimate efforts to do that. But I think that what we have to do when it comes to Black people, and something, no matter what has been done, the only way that they could technically get rid of racism in America, which you never get rid of racism, but how do you address it? I guess I should say you'll never get rid of it, but how should it be addressed? I think it should be addressed the same way that we deal with, and we've said this before, any other crisis. I think that the repercussions of doing anything that would be deemed discriminatory towards Black people should have severe consequences. And it doesn't even have to be intentional. It can even have that impact. In other words, if you happen to be a judge or a prosecutor who has numbers that clearly show that Black people are subjected to longer sentences, charges, prosecution, or anything like that, as opposed to other groups, I think that the penalty should be like the RICO penalty. I think that why don't you treat mistreating Black people the same way you treat freak-offs? I would love for them to go after racists the same way they go after Diddy for baby oil.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in other words, it's amazing how the federal government takes that, what happened with him, or even what happened with R. Kelly, and goes after them with guns blazing, because they say that's terrible what those individuals are doing. But then for how long do we watch like a TV series of Black men being shot in the back, when they were unarmed, or people putting knees on people's neck? You know what I'm saying? That was, they put him in the situation with that we saw in Minnesota with George Floyd. That just happened to have been COVID, and everybody saw it. So he got convicted and he got some time, which I don't think he got enough time. I think that not only should that person get it, the chief of police for that city should have went to prison too. right? Because this is what we know. We know that George, what's the name of the guy's name? The one that put the knee on his neck?
Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin. We know that he was a field training officer. We know that there had been many complaints about him mistreating people. We know that they obviously allowed him, number one, to be on the street as a police officer, but number two, training other police officers. In fact, 3 of the other police officers were new officers.
Yeah.
So I think that everybody could get it. And then every time something like that happens and the chief of police says, I'm against it. The mayor, I'm against it. I think go after him, make it a RICO statute, a statute.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Do the same intensity that they went after P. Diddy. Let's go after people who do things to us. If there's a judge who we find out is sentencing black people to more years than white people, then they should RICO his butt.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
We should RICO the everybody down the line that's involved in that. If we find that if there's a prosecutor that's doing it, let's go after the deputy DA and the district attorney with the same type of intensity. And until we treat the mistreatment of black people, which is, as you know, it's like how we got you got people. Okay, I get it. Like I saw this white lady going off about what happened, that he got off. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. My thing is, well, did you have that same intensity when it comes to us and our mistreatment? Right. The way there's states where we make up or locations where we make up 5%, 10% of the population and over 50% of the prison population. I think that if that exists, then it's a crisis. Mm-hmm. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then what do they do when there's a crisis? They talk about build a boys and girls club in the hood. They need somewhere to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, what you need to do is everybody that's connected to it. And that's the biggest RICO in the world. The biggest racketeering is the one that's been done against us. And everybody that's involved in it should get it.
Correct.
And if you're not going to get it, then whatever. But then at the same time, then, you want us to, are black people happy because P. Diddy got off? Are black people happy because Bill Cosby got out of jail? Are black people happy because OJ got off? Right? Mm-hmm. Black people aren't happy to see people who are accused of crimes not convicted. Black people are so sick and tired of the system mistreating people that any type of we know how they do people, and to the very least, as they do symbolic stuff, that's symbolic to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
Because it works against us so much that any time that we see that there's any degree of in a justice system that gives us any room without putting your knee on our neck, then there is some degree of saying, you're so disgusted and so fed up with the system that, you just get tired of it. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way I see it. I'm like, if you want to get rid of it, you don't show me I'm cool with the museums. Yeah, I'm cool with giving a little money this place and giving a little money that place. I'm cool with, putting some black people on some stamps. I'm cool with giving certain money to certain organizations. But what I'm real cool with is make everyone in this country, if you're serious about it, who is in any way involved in any discriminatory conduct, whether it's intentional or unintentional, right? And make them pay.
Yeah.
Do the same thing that you did. We should be sitting around looking at TV saying, man, they got a RICO on so-and-so because, if we found out that the studio has been doing black people wrong.
Correct.
Right. So much so that they've taken their artistic creations, their artistic contributions, and they've taken them away from people. Like the same, what Diddy is doing to those people, man. Studios have been doing that to artists forever.
Yep. Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And they act like Diddy is the new guy that did it. No, all these studios have done it. I was watching how they talked about, I don't know how true it was, but how the Shaft and some of these other sitcoms that they came out with actually saved these networks. And actually how Norman Lear did not create the Jeffersons, did not create Good Times, that somebody else created that, and this guy has nothing. And they still are artistic value. And I think that's RICO. That's stealing someone's, their artistic creations. Right. So, I mean, that's how we deal with it. If you want to make me happy, if you want to know how to deal with it, let's start RICOing them. Right. If you own a store and they find out that you're mistreating certain individuals who come in your store, I think you should be charged criminally. I think that's a RICO. Not only you should be charged, but everybody that's in your store that does it all the way down the line. Right. So that's what we need. That's what they trafficking us. What P. Diddy did is nothing compared to what they do to us on a daily basis. So why don't we RICO them? You're gonna impress me and make me, happy. Then that's what we need to do. That's the kind of RICO we need. We need a RICO like that. You know what I mean? Everybody all the way down the line. Everybody. Everybody can get it. That's what we need to do. And that money they taking away from HBCUs like Tennessee State, all that money that Tennessee owes TSU. Come on, man. That's RICO. Somebody needs to go to prison for that.
They're trying to take that school.
But anyway, man, see, I get hot at the end. But at any rate, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week, same place, same time. And until that time, stay blessed.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future of working families.